All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you all here. Thanks for coming back for our second week of Fridays Are for Founders. The goal here is to bring entrepreneurs and small business owners together and answer some of the questions that you have that are practical and real. There's a lot of good information that's being pushed out to us by people, but not an interactive conversation that makes the most sense. And so every week we're sort of bringing on a different co-host, somebody who can come and help give advice from their experience and expertise. This week, we're really fortunate to have Shannon Wynne, who's joined us, who's been a restaurateur and philanthropist and just such a good investor in the community with his time and resources. And I think very practical this week. When we surveyed everybody last week from what they thought about the first program, what kind of things you'd be interested in learning more about, I think particularly this week, now that Judge Jenkins on a county level and Governor Abbott from a state level have issued times and dates on when we can go back to work and in what ways we can do that, it's good to have a discussion around that and be able to ask some key questions and to have somebody like Shannon who is grappling with these issues, as well and has a good amount of experience and strategic thought process on this. It'd be great to have him come on. So Shannon, thanks for being here. Would you mind just giving a brief overview to the people on the call and who you are, what your background is, and what you've been dealing with over the past month and a half or so?
Sure. I grew up in Dallas. I started in the restaurant business in 1980. I've had a lot of restaurants in that period of time. It's 40 years. Currently, we have 5 concepts in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Also, we're in Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina. And we are the concepts that they would recognize here in Dallas would be Rodeo Goat, Flying Fish, Meddlesome Moth, Miriam Cocina, Latina, Bird Cafe in Fort Worth, and did I say Flying Fish and Flying Saucer? I can't remember.
So it's a lot of concepts. That's a lot of restaurants. That's great.
Yeah, so for each restaurant, there's a different set of guidelines putting safety at the top of all of them. When I got a degree in biology, I've never taken a business class in my life. So all of you boys and girls out there that want to get into business, do not fret. If I can do it, you can do it. But the first day of my first biology class as a freshman, Dr. Harold F. Murray told us all in no uncertain terms that in the long run, the virus will win. And I did not know what he was talking about. I did not understand it. But he referred to the virus as being the most formidable opponent that mankind has got. And so I thought it was very, very interesting that in this day and time, it's somewhat of a threat has come to fruition. And furthermore, I do not think that this reopening at 25% makes any sense, but we can discuss that as we go along.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for being here and for being willing to participate and give some advice and counsel to entrepreneurs across the area. I'll hand it over to you, Delanie, to sort of moderate the conversation and work through getting questions from people on the call and asking some of the predetermined questions we created.
Yeah. As you said, the 25%, we'll kind of get to that definitely down the line, but maybe let's just start from the beginning. You talk a little bit about your background and all your different restaurants in multiple states and multiple cities. Talk a bit about how the industry has been hit and how y'all are going about that, especially with different restaurants across state borders. How has your industry been affected and how are y'all dealing with it?
Well, I mean, it just took a little time to figure out how to serve from the curb, and it because of that, it's been a growth process. We have had to take our servers into consideration, of course, and put them first, allowing anyone that was not comfortable with coming into work to take a pass. We applied for PPP money. We're fortunate enough to get it. I think the main disconnect with the general public on PPP money is that we don't get that money. That money is not coming to us. That money is for us to pay our payroll and our landlords and our utility bills. But they're furious at all of these organizations that receive PPP money as though it were a bad thing or they were somehow going to misuse it. Now, that said, some people, because people are people, human nature is going to lure them into the trap of using that money for things that they shouldn't. Not a wise decision. The IRS did not start doing this just yesterday, so they understand how to follow the money. With restaurateurs that I've talked to that have suggested that they were either not going to hire back certain employees or that they weren't going to use the money as directed by the federal government, I warned them that, first off, it's not our money. This is not. We're given the money to is payroll, to use for payroll. So I'm at odds with quite a few people who intend to use the money the wrong way. I think it's a bad misuse of an opportunity that we have to get a lot of people back on their feet, and that's just me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the PPP. It came out, it ran out very quickly. Many people were frustrated in the whole application process. Shannon, if you have any stories about your application process, you said you did get some. Maybe Trey, you have some insight onto this second round and how things are going. But let's address that, as I know that is constantly a question on people's mind right now.
Well, the PPP application process, we call it the banks flat-footed. We use a Texas bank. They're a good size. They're very conservative. They weren't sure what to do. They quickly got up to speed, and our CFO worked with them diligently to comply with all the information that they need for us to be successful in our application. I can understand that many restaurant groups did not have the either relationship that we had with our bank, or someone at the helm that could direct them through the process. It was grueling. You can imagine with 32 restaurants in all those different states, and we have 1,400 employees, so we had to let about 1,000 people go.
Wow.
And the hiring back process is a whole new kettle of fish, because there are people that understand that they can make more money being on federal assistance with unemployment than coming back to work for the payroll numbers that we calculated in the 2-month period of time that we were directed to calculate their income. Now they come to find out that they pretty much kind of have to come back if offered the job. So that's the directive that the government is giving them. We obviously don't want anybody to come back that's afraid of coming back. We are following all the guidelines to comply and regulate the health aspects inside the restaurant. The hand sanitizers, the mouth, the PPE. If someone doesn't have it, we have it for you. The distancing, we're of course keeping to go, curbside, fully active. So, all we can do is do what we're told to do to the best of our ability, and see what happens. This is a gigantic experiment. This is, and we're kind of the lab rat in that experiment. We had the opportunity not to open. I think, we all discussed it. The purpose of which is for us to learn how to deal with the human nature that's involved with partial openings, because I think that's going to be with us for a while. We want to know how to do it. We want to learn the new paradigm for how to do it safely, and that's the reason we chose to reopen.
And I think that's a good point. One of the things you mentioned was you had a good relationship with the bank already, and that's really helpful for people. And so we wrote an article in the last week that focuses primarily on.
I had 6 of those, by the way.
You had 6 of these kids. Well, you can have this one for the afternoon. Not kidding. And so we put together an article on some tips for funding, and one of those tips is, if you don't have a personal relationship with a banker, go to a smaller bank. They have a lot more leeway and opportunity to help, and a lot less demand. But I think it's important to, and I think that it's the thing I really liked about what you shared, Shannon, was the strategic way in which you guys looked at the PPP and how to bring it in, how to keep your employees and put them in a position that was good for them, but also find a way to bring them back and putting them forward. I think that's as entrepreneurs, as business owners and founders, that's something that we have to be cognizant of as we're trying to go back to work from an operational and logistics perspective. But then there's also this mental health process that we're going through, because every one of us are kind of dealing with this differently. Have you had conversations with your staff or any of your employees, servers or whatnot, that are you're having to deal with that particular issue?
Oh, sure. I mean, those that have underlying conditions, for instance, we tell them not to come back to work. We make this opportunity, and I say opportunity, not obligatory, but people are seemingly, I mean, it's an experiment for us too. People are they've been cooped up for a long time. Many, if not most, of our employees are ready to get back to work. A tipped employee can make a good deal of money, and we don't know how that money is going to work out quite yet in this experiment. Today is number 1. The to-go tipping has been pretty good, but you have a staff of 9 in the whole restaurant. Now we have to have a staff of 16, maybe 17 in the whole restaurant. I was at Flying Fish over on Irving Boulevard this morning, and man, it was. I said, Caesar, asked the general manager, how many people are you allowed to have in here? He said 37, and I said, well, that's how many people do you have in the kitchen? He said 14. I said, that includes the people that you have in the kitchen. He went, no, I didn't know that. I went, yeah, it includes your staff. So the only opportunity really for people to make any money at 25% is the improved curb service. And you remember, this is one real important thing. People are learning how to use curb service. I had lunch today with my son. I picked up lunch at a local Italian restaurant, and I love their lasagna. But they did not post their telephone number on the outside of their building. So I had to go into the restaurant and get the food, which really kind of hurt me. It's really important for all the restaurants in town and anybody that has curbside service to post their telephone number so you can communicate with them without getting out of your car. I went and picked up some big porcelain planters at Home out in Farmers Branch. I don't know if you all have been to At Home, but it's just like gigantic superstore for everything you could possibly use in your house. And they have the number posted right there. You pull up, you dial the number, they bring it out. It's perfect. So we're all learning together, and we're not so put off by having to do that now. The first couple of days of this, I was angry that I had to go get stuff or call Uber. Now I'm just used to it. It's like no big deal.
Right. In that case,
at all?
Absolutely.
Well, great. In that case, you mentioned even as a consumer that there's been some challenges with curbside pickup and the learning curve and things such as that. As a restaurateur and owning all these restaurants, what challenges have you all faced during adjusting to the curbside, adjusting to the world we're in, and what solutions have y'all learned along the way?
Well, just what I said, it's all down to the numbers. You got to figure out how to make a profit in a whole new operating procedure. Our numbers come out. Our numbers for period 4 came out yesterday. I haven't even looked at it yet, but it will show that we lost money in all of our restaurants just doing curb service. So the question is, were we better off from a brand recognition and maintaining our clientele staying open at curbside, or were we better to just close like so many restaurants have? Not close for good, but close any production. We chose to try to do curbside because the people that love us, just want it, and we're trying to appeal to them and maintain the brand, and it's not easy.
Right.
So we just had to make the decision to go ahead and operate curbside.
So as this relates to other businesses that are looking at this, and as we were talking a little bit before, Mark Cuban's been really vocal about this in the last couple of days about how bad of an idea he thinks it is for people to go back now, how it's going to be devastating to see the complete ramp back up of more COVID cases. The last 2 days we've had the highest number of cases during this whole thing in Dallas County and in this region. Do you agree with his perspective? It sounds like you guys are trying to figure this out, but for companies that are trying to maintain relationships with customers and trying to serve them during this time, what's your advice to them?
Oh, I don't know. I think everybody has to do what they need to do to fit their comfort level. Again, having a degree in biology, never used it, but I have it. Having a degree in biology, I'm respectful, let me put it that way, of the virility and the power of and precision of a virus. It does not play games. And my prediction, as are a lot of others, and I'm again not a doctor, but everything I've read I agree with, and that is there theoretically and most likely will be a spike due to relaxed disciplines. Texas has been very successful and diligent in overall cases, overall deaths. But remember, so much of our population is rural. And if they segmented out the city activity from the entire state, the numbers would be different in terms of percentages. I have a daughter that's 24 years old that's in New York City and living in a 350 square foot apartment. And, I call her every day just to keep her sane. But it's hit so hard there. And those communities are really the canary in the coal mine for us. I mean, it might not be the numbers because we have different saturations and different densities of population, but watch the curve because that's what the virus does. Without Anthony Fauci and Dr. Birx, we would be up a creek. They've kept everything pretty real, so I pretty much tend to want to listen to them. Now, I have business partners and I have a lot of friends. They're on the other side of the curve from me. and they're ready to get back. They don't. It's not that they think that this was a fake. What's the term everybody's using? A hoax. It's not a hoax. They know it's not a hoax, but they also think that the Swedish approach might have been a smarter one. And then, you know what? In the long run, we may learn that being more active allowed us to develop immunity, and we had the same amount of deaths. But, you know, I'm 68 years old. I'm not going out, period.
Yeah. Kind of, kind of on that note, everybody has their different opinion. You know, some people are going to open, some people are just absolutely not. Some people are going to wait until they can set in the right type of operations. You know, and no matter what you do, there's a chance of backlash. You know, there's a chance of somebody kind of giving you a hard time about it or not agreeing with it. How can you, as a restaurateur, communicate, work on your communications and work on your marketing and be ready and prepared for some of that backlash, or just, you know, even just communicate efficiently your message about what you're doing and why?
Well, I think doing interviews like this, being honest. I mean, if as long as you're honest and you stay apolitical, and you tell the truth, and it's when restaurateurs or any other business gets out and starts to put spin on it. We've all learned how to detect spin. You know, we all have learned how to avoid the hard question by spinning it out of the way. I think people appreciate a direct answer. I'm not savvy enough in interviews or politics to spin my way out of a direct question to give you a direct answer. And I think people appreciate the forthright response more than the spin. You know, I'm not gonna tell you a bunch of hooey about what we're gonna do. We're gonna try to do the right thing, and that's about it.
Yeah. So in that case, you know, what is the right thing for you and your team? You know, what have y'all, as y'all start talking about what the plan is, what are you guys focusing on? You know, what is your plan? How are you putting that together? And what's your, you know, big priorities and how and when you get back?
You know, I've thought a lot about making plans, but there's so much yet to know. This thing could turn on its ear and go a different direction in no time. So we're not spending a lot of capital or time or resources planning for what the next year looks like, because nobody knows, period. They don't know. All they can do is hope for the best. So we have created 2 or 3 different scenarios in our minds and on a chalkboard that look at 50% return, 75% return, and 100% return. One thing I know for certain is, before this started, and I guess I hate to keep leaning toward the restaurant as the vehicle for this discussion, but that's all I know. There will be far less restaurants when we come out of this. That's a good thing, not for me, but because the restaurant industry as a whole was way overbloated. There were too many restaurants in the city of Dallas. Labor market was beyond its capabilities, and that's changed in a matter of days. So I think there will be a healthier economy for the restaurant industry when it reopens. I hope we're one of the ones that are left standing, but it'll be a healthier economy overall for restaurants for sure.
Yeah.
If I were a developer, I'd be scared.
Any comments, Trey?
Yeah. So if you were talking to your customers right now, what kind of conversations are you having with them? What kinds of things do you want them to know? What kind of things as businesses that may or may not be in the hospitality and restaurant space, like, what's your advice for how you maintain or be consistent in retaining those customers and creating that relationship?
Well, that's why we're open now. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, they have to see that we take it seriously. They have to see that we are not cutting corners. They have to see that we have their best interest in mind. As far as other particular industries, you know, I can't imagine anybody signing a new lease for a restaurant right now. Not because of the COVID, but because nobody's going to sign a new lease without an out for pandemic. My lease mentions pandemic. Most of them mention pandemic, but there's not an out for it. So if I'm a young restaurateur or any business, I need to have language in my new lease that gives me an out for pandemic. That said, the landlord isn't going to want to sign a lease, going to give you a lease that has an out for pandemic, and their lender isn't going to want to loan him money if there's an out for pandemic. So the insurance companies in the long run are going to be the winners in this particular case, because they're going to have to create product that can protect us all. And until we have that product, we can't even begin to move forward with new leases and new restaurants. So, you know, we're hoping to renegotiate all of our leases with all of our landlords. Not that they're going to accept pandemic in the new lease, but we're not going to be able to pay full rates once our PPP runs out.
And so that's an interesting point to really to talk through, is how are you? We talked a little bit about this last week, but how are you and how are your partners, vendors, you know, landlords responding to the fact that, look, we're all up a creek here and we're all dealing with losses and we're all dealing with problems? Do you feel like most people are amenable to finding common ground, and how are you guys approaching that? Do you feel like you're giving some and hoping that people will do the same? But how are you doing that with everybody, from your suppliers to your landlords to your employees, like you talked about before?
Well, this 25% business doesn't help our argument, because if we were still at curbside, we'd say, well, sorry, we can't pay your rent. Take it or leave it. Now that we have 25%, they think we can operate. Well, we can't, you know. So they've gone through 2 or 3 levels of denial. At the very beginning, all the landlords said, sorry, I'm not getting any breaks from my lender. You're on the hook. Then they slowly started realizing that they're standing in the middle of the swamp. And they slowly start softening up. And they slowly start, okay, we'll talk to you. And I said, when we get our PP money, we're paying you. But when our PP money runs out, you better have a plan, because we're not going to be able to pay your rent. So I imagine that level 3 of recognition and denial is going to, or recognition and you know, realizing that they've got to make some adjustments, is going to come a little bit closer to the run out date of our PPP. Toward the middle of June, and we're advising, what we're doing is pretty much saying we're going to pay you percentage rent, and that's going to be in many cases on a take it or leave it basis. So the chances are we're going to lose 3 or 4 restaurants, you know, because there are REITs that control them, or there are big VC groups that control them, that are willing to take the loss. And I don't know what they're thinking, but they are. A lot of people in Deep Ellum are having to deal with landlords there that were unreasonable in the beginning, and now they're starting to be reasonable.
Funny how that happens. Kind of on the same note, what about you know, ordering product or inventory with this unclear and inconsistent demand? How are y'all adjusting to that, especially with now, you know, obviously, you know, sales are shifting on the lower end, and with curbside, you know, how are y'all adjusting to this demand and ordering your products?
Well, we just order what we sell. You know, it's pretty easy. It's because our menus are limited, our service is limited, So we're only serving about 75% in many of our stores. In Flying Fish, we're serving all of our menu, but in many of them, in order to keep the labor down in the kitchen, we have to have a pared down offering. So yeah, that's just everything scales down. And I think everybody, I walked into Miriam this morning and every other table is paired with another table. So there are these great big square tables. On a 2x4 table, they're now 2 4x4 tables. One 4x4 table instead of 2 2x4 tables. And the restaurant just looks empty. But people are going to get used to it. They said, "Oh, the restaurant looks terrible." No, you're fine. It looks good. And I'm generally one saying, "You got to fix this. You got to fix that." I'm going, "No, you're all right." And hand sanitizer everywhere. Little squirt bottles everywhere. We've got new ones in the bathrooms. It's an experiment. We'll see.
Has there been any sort of activity with other restaurateurs in the area that you guys are having conversations, getting together, trying to find ways to, what are you doing here? How are you negotiating your lease? Is there camaraderie amongst that?
There's a group of restaurant guys that we talk to. This is what people don't realize is that when March 15th hit, we still had inventory that was half sold. So it's been sitting in the freezer and we've been unable to pay our vendors for that particular inventory. We then went on COD, on 7-day COD with everybody. We said, we'll pay you for this old stuff later, but right now we got to be on 7-day COD. So, we all talk about it. We all share relationships a lot, overlapping relationships, but there's so many vendors out there that people have relationships already. And if you have a good relationship with them, they'll work with you. I mean, they don't have a choice really, but you can't get blood out of a stone.
Well, I think that's a good message for the people on the call to really begin to think about is as you're facing these problems, we don't have to face these problems alone. And there are other people that do what you do, other organizations out there that are in the same field of the people on the call, and just recognizing that there is often camaraderie in the age of crisis and things like this, where we're able to come together and help support each other, helping us all try to get through this and be able to survive. And as we also talk about in the article about the 5 tips for funding, the last one is don't rely solely on funding. Not everybody's getting the PPP. Not everybody's going to get the PPP, but you can't rely just on that to keep you in business. And as you said, Shannon, that PPP for you guys is going to run out. It's a help, but it's not a saving grace there. And so, I just encourage, the people and the entrepreneurs on the call to start reaching out if you're not already and finding ways to help. One of the ways that we help people do that is we've launched something called the Fast Start Mentor Program, and we're directly connecting entrepreneurs and small businesses with mentors, subject matter experts, experienced entrepreneurs, or service providers who can come alongside and give your business a look, help provide some outside support in different specific areas. Yesterday, I had a woman coming to me, and she was dealing with issues of margin and how do I calculate my real margin. And we said, well, that's great. We can set you up with somebody who's an expert in the world of finance to really give you an understanding, so that as you're trying to make decisions for the future of your business, you've got a good understanding of where you are and where you can be financially. And so I think that's an awesome point that you made there, Shannon. That's important as well. What are some of the other things that you guys are having to think through when you're looking at the entirety of the business that you're having to rethink or sort of make a plan for that you hadn't had to do before? What about this is this just another obstacle, a big obstacle, but another obstacle that you're just used to facing in business, or has this been way different in how you've had to respond strategically and operationally?
Well, obviously none of us have lived long enough to have seen the first one. So misery loves company. And I think that we all have, one of kind of the comforting things is that it's not something we did wrong. We didn't. It wasn't that we had a bad business model. It's just that this thing happened, and we've had to adjust to it. One word that I love about the pandemic and business in the pandemic is learning how to put your business into hibernation. I love that term. It's how to slow it down enough that you can exist through this winter of problems and wake it back up again and get back to work. I think that people are the general public is very tolerant right now. They're very understanding for the most part. It aggravates me when people justify going back to work as their freedom. This isn't a question of your freedom. This is a question of you being a part of a problem that could exist. And it's not just your choice. If you go back to work, it needs to follow the science. And when you make a decision to not wear a mask or to not follow the rules, you jeopardize other people. And we want to limit that as much as possible. I will say this, that if the spike goes back up in Dallas or any town that we're in, we'll be prepared to shut right down. We're really doing this to learn how to do it. If it proves to be foolish, we're out of there. Back into hibernation.
And on sort of on a national scale, what does a regression or a reset of spikes do to us? Does it continue to just devastate the economy, or do we at some point come to a new normal and we just say, look, we've got to figure out how to make this work and how we're going to move forward in this process? I mean, should we expect even worse circumstances in the next month to 2 months?
Dr. Harold F. Murray would tell you that people are going to die. Mm-hmm. That's the sad truth. We will not get out of this unscathed. It will probably, all doctors have said it's not if it comes back in the fall, when it comes back in the winter or fall. There's going to be a second wave until we can inoculate against it, until we can treat it, until we can detect it. Those are three things: detection, inoculation, and treatment. All three different things. It will be our foe. And it will be our foe until that happens. Does it take a year? Does it take 2 years? I can't see that it doesn't take 2 years. I mean, I don't know. Again, not a doctor, but I do know a lot of moving parts. Human beings, they generally don't do the right thing. They really don't. That's right. The reason I keep telling people. That's the reason we have laws. It's the reason we have rules. Because human nature is not our best friend.
Mm. That's scary, but it's a reality I think that we all have to face. And one of the things that we talk about with small businesses and entrepreneurs a lot of the time is what are ways that they can come out of this sort of with a plan for a different world we may be living at that time. And we always say that, necessity is the mother of innovation. And we're encouraged by seeing some of the entrepreneurs that we work with come up with new product lines, new service lines, and modifying what they currently do to fit a market that could be changing. What process do you go through, or are you guys thinking through in terms of what needs to change to fit in this new world? You talked a lot about it in terms of the curbside delivery and the way you're setting up the restaurants but even as you mentioned before, you may have a couple of restaurants shut down. How's that going to modify what you guys do? Do you wait and try to reopen those concepts again once things get better, or do you focus on what you have, or do you try new concepts? When you guys look at that future, not knowing what it is, what are you trying to do to plan for that?
It occurred to me that one of the things that I think, again, trying to be a student of human nature, one of the things that apt to change. Before this all started, if you ran into a friend, your normal reaction would be to shake hands and to say, how are you doing? And to use niceties. And that developed a certain social decorum. That decorum evolved out of many, many years, and it changes quite a bit. You know, there are slang terms that we start saying like no problem. We didn't say no problem when Delanie was a baby. We didn't say that, just weren't words that we said. We'd say you're welcome, whatever. And so all of those decorums, business and social interaction, all of those are going to evolve into a new appearance. They're going to sound differently. We're going to expect of each other different types of reactions. We're going to develop our own new ways of navigating everything, you know, because, you know, right, I don't know about you all, but right now, if I watch something on Netflix, my wife and I were watching something the other night, and she said, God, my first reaction was to tell him not to touch that other person because, you know, we're not used to seeing people touch each other. And I think there will be a certain amount of shaming when people aren't following the rules because they're putting us into harm's way. Nobody wants to be shamed, but it's probably pretty necessary. There's going to be self-policing. There are going to be new ground rules. I think one thing it's going to teach all of the entrepreneurs that are in here is that it's not going to kill them if they don't go to work. We can get a lot done from home. It's going to change a lot of international travel. It's going to change a lot of office bricks and mortar. Those requirements will never be the same, or not for a long time. So my staff, you know, we have 32 people at my office. We only right this minute probably have 6 in the office. Everybody else is working from home. Gosh, if I'd known that before this all started, I would have rented a much smaller office.
Right.
And it's not hard, you know.
And it's been productive for you. You feel good.
I don't
You feel
care,
good
I don't
about
care
it.
what they're wearing.
Yeah. So
I mean, I don't have pants on right now.
Well, that happens. Well, so let me ask you this: is there? And you touched on this a little bit, but is there anything good about what's going on right now? What do we take from this moving forward and say, you know what, like that was devastating, it was horrible, but there might have been some nuggets of things that were good. Maybe it's slowing down. Maybe it's learning how to put your business in hibernation. Maybe it's just, you know, recognizing that we don't, we're not in control of everything. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, like I said, I think it's great for the restaurant business. As bad as it is right now, I think it will come out much stronger, much healthier, much more dynamic. We needed to kill off 25% of the you know, franchise. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, and hell, there aren't enough people in this city to give everybody a piece of the pie, and still be able to be in a you know, a profitable enterprise. So that's, you know, for the restaurant business, that's great. But what you said earlier, you know, just the mother of invention will come in and retool most of our businesses to a different paradigm that's going to be more efficient. You know, we got fat and happy for a long time. You know, we have some employees on our staff that we don't need. We had them because they've been there a long time, and we kind of got comfortable with them. We've come to find out that, you know, maybe we don't need them. So
it's a hard truth, right?
Huh?
That's a hard truth, right?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
It's I can't believe that my business is running right now with me not going into the office every day. It's running just fine without me. They love not having me around.
Well, yeah, that leadership component is important, though, right? So if as you think about, as these entrepreneurs think about sort of going back to work and leading their organizations and focusing on, prioritizing things correctly, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs around, look, we're 45 days, 60 days into this almost, and this is what you need to be focusing on for the next 60 days or the next 90 days and so forth and so on?
Well, that's a big question, because you're talking about so many different industries here. I just think that there are a lot of smart people out there that are discovering different niches to try to make a buck at. I know you all are probably too young to look at Facebook, but there are more cool little things being sold on Facebook. And I'm scrolling through, wondering what my friends are doing. I go, whoa, and it's like a squirrel runs across. I just want to get whatever that is. But no, there'll be tons of innovation. There'll be tons of recognition. There'll be tons of heartbreak. There are going to be people that just simply have wanted to do X all their lives and are coming to find out that doing Y makes them happier. And they're going to have to come to those terms. I've heard that a lot. I've heard a lot of people say, gosh, I've really had such a pivot on what I need in life. And, for people in the United States of America, if you live in France and you're a baker, you want to be a good baker. You don't plan on being president of the United States. You don't want to be a captain of industry. You want to be a damn good baker. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
So for people to find their niche and be happy with it and start to learn how to look at life differently, I think it's going to be an eye-opener.
That's great. There's
going to still be the vultures of greed. There are going to be a lot of vultures. Oh my gosh. People that have kept their powder dry are circling like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's good advice.
I think that will also give opportunity to people that were possibly not making very much money before, either sell their product out or to jump on some bandwagons that are wanting to repopulate and man up and try some new things. I imagine you all come across that quite often, don't you?
We do. We're seeing lots of people trying to figure out how to leverage this as an opportunity and really also try to, come out of this emerging as a market leader. And the benefit of being an earlier stage company, a startup or even a small business, is your ability to pivot, your ability to be agile and mobile and make decisions quickly. You're not turning the Titanic like a major corporation. And so, going through that discovery process of what we call the customer discovery process of understanding what your customers may want, but then leading them down that road too, is something that we're seeing. And like I said before, I'm just encouraged that these entrepreneurs are thinking that way and they're looking for options there and they're bouncing ideas off and testing things. I think we're going to see a lot of that happening.
One of our marketing, the person that heads up our marketing is a woman here in Dallas named Stephanie Casey, and she has had downtime with her company, and she gave us notice last week and just said pretty much, you know what, I've learned about a different part of me that I haven't known before, and I'm going to focus on people that are rebuilding in the nonprofit area. It's hard marketing for 32 different restaurants across the United States. It's not easy. So anybody out there that's a good marketing person, give us a call.
Well, and there's a question here from Paul. He says, how has your approach to marketing changed during this time?
Oh,
I mean, are you spending money or no?
spending money. We try never to spend money. Are we trying to take advantage of the new culture that social media has opened up? I mean, social media has opened up a lot in terms of its willingness, because people need to find a place to eat, and they want to learn how to cook at home. They want to do all kinds of new things. We had a wine tasting at Bird Cafe in Fort Worth last week. Everybody got their wine. They came to the restaurant. They bought it. They went home. They had their food. We prepared their food. Everybody had a wine tasting with all the same wines. There were like 60 people in this virtual wine tasting, and we'd never done that before. So yeah, there are new marketing adventures out there, and we're looking for somebody that is young enough to understand all the different formats, but that is also, going to ride through this uncharted water with us, because it's going to be a humdinger.
Absolutely.
Do we actually have people listening to this right now?
Oh yeah, we do. They're interacting. We have a few minutes left. If anybody else has any pressing questions, Delanie, do you have one or two final questions for Shannon?
Yeah, I guess we can, we've talked about it a little bit here and there, but, what, always kind of a good closing question. What has been, the biggest lesson learned? And, what has been that aha moment and something that you'll take with you, even outside of this, and that you'll continue to, use as a part of your businesses beyond COVID?
One of the things that I have become much less sensitive to are the haters. So when haters start to hate online, I got to remember that they're only this big.
Yes.
There are not many of them, and most everybody else was asleep. So,
Yeah.
Used to, when somebody posted something negative on Yelp or something, I would go ballistic, and why did this happen? I don't worry about that anymore.
Right.
If our politics can happen like they happen, with the absurdities that happen in them, and everybody forgets them the next day, I got no problem about a burger that didn't go out perfectly. They'll get over it.
What to worry about now is those people that are coming to curbside, and those people, like you said, that love you, and they're there even through all of this, and they'll be there when we come back to COVID.
Yeah.
So my question, and this is just out of curiosity, but my question is, what's the next great concept that we see from you guys? What's the next? Where do you think the next great food opportunity is? And are you guys thinking about that right now?
Oh, as an industry, we tried it and it didn't work. We had mud hen meat and greens in the farmers market, and I think health is always the new frontier for restaurants. It was a poor location, and we really worked hard at trying to provide Dallas with a clean and healthy place to eat good food without being vegetarian or vegan. So I just think that the blue sky is always with health and nutrition, and hopefully that this particular industry is forced to police itself on those terms and get rid of the things that have made us a bloated and unhealthy society. I mean, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. And again comes that freedom word. There ought to be all kinds of special supervision and oversight to what we're allowed to consume.
Oh, that's good. I think that's a great way to move forward, and excited to see what else comes out from you guys. And wish you all the best with all of your concepts, all of your restaurants. Thank you so much for taking time today to come do this.
This is fun. This is fun. This is the first time I've ever done one of these live with my son Sam down at Brain Dead. Does them nearly every day, but I've never done them.
Never done them. Well, I just, so you know, we get really good feedback from this, and people really appreciate the ability to ask questions and get answers. That interactivity is so important because so many of our entrepreneurs are trying to figure out what to do next, and getting a little bit of just getting to hear your story and get a little bit of advice from you ends up being really, really valuable. So thank you for being willing to share your time and your expertise and talents with us. And
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Best of luck moving forward.
All right.
Thank you guys for signing in today. We'll do another one of these next week. As long as they continue to be valuable, we'll use them and try to help bring different people like Shannon. What an amazing wealth of experience in entrepreneurship, and clearly has strong feelings about where things are, and I think has a lot of insight to make those sort of perceptions that he has. But we'll send out a survey. We'll get a little bit of feedback from you guys on what you like and what you really need next week. Who should we bring on? And we'll go out and find co-hosts and other people that can come in and help to add value by giving you the same type of information and support. He's standing there trying to get me to pay attention to him. So I'm going to go do that. Delanie, thanks. You did a great job. Thanks for hosting and doing this. And we'll see everybody. Have a great weekend and stay safe.
Bye.